Okay, so this is the Gemara Daf Yomi. This is Avodah Zarah Daf 23. So I made Daf 22 age restricted because this being a legal code of law in Judaism, there was actual case law of specific incidences of bestiality that were described in the Gemara. So I did not want to make that available outside of the age restricted requirement of YouTube. So Daf 23, the Gemara cites another resolution of the apparent contradiction between the Mishnah, which rules that Gentiles are suspected of bestiality, and the Braita, which permits an animal purchased from Gentiles to be sacrificed as an offering. So Ravina said that it is not difficult. This Mishnah issues its ruling with regard to the halacha ad initio, well, that Braita is referring to the halacha after the fact. The Gemara asks, from where do you say that there is a difference in the case between ad initio and after the fact? As we learned in the Mishnah, a woman may not seclude herself with them because they are suspected of engaging in forbidden relations. One can raise a contradiction from another Mishnah, Ketubot 26b, with regard to a woman who was imprisoned by Gentiles. If she was imprisoned due to monetary matters, she is permitted to her husband, even if he is a priest, as there is no concern that she was raped. If she was imprisoned due to a capital offense, she is forbidden to her husband, if he is a priest, as the captors would not restrain themselves from raping her. The first clause of the Mishnah in Ketubot rules that a woman who was imprisoned in seclusion with Gentiles is not assumed to have engaged in intercourse. This apparently contradicts the statement of the Mishnah here, which rules that a woman may not seclude herself with Gentiles. So the Gemara continues, rather, isn't it correct to conclude from here that there is a difference for us between ad initio, as in the Mishnah here, and after the fact, as in the Mishnah in Ketubot? The Gemara rejects this conclusion. From where can this be proven? Perhaps I could actually say to you, generally, even after the fact, one may not assume that a woman who was secluded with a Gentile did not engage in intercourse with him. And here, in the Mishnah in Ketubot, this is the reason that she is permitted to her husband even after having been imprisoned, since her husband might not agree to pay if his wife was raped. The Gentile was fearful of raping her due to the potential loss of his money. So the Gemara adds, know that this is the explanation, as the latter clause of that Mishnah teaches, if she was imprisoned due to a capital offense, she is forbidden to her husband, because then he's not going to get her back, so whatever fine and whatever. Okay, clearly the difference is that in this case there's no incentive for the Gentiles to leave her unharmed. The Gemara concludes, and nothing more needs discussion, as this is certainly the correct interpretation of that Mishnah. So Rabbi Pedat said, the contradiction between the Mishnah, which rules that Gentiles are suspected of bestiality, and the Braita, which permits an animal purchased from Gentiles to be sacrificed as an offering, is not difficult. This Mishnah is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, while that Braita is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis, meaning the majority. As we learned in a Mishnah, Para 2.1, with regard to the red heifer of purification, Rabbi Eliezer says that it may not be purchased from Gentiles, and the rabbis permit it to be purchased from Gentiles. Rabbi Pedat explains, what? Is it not correct to say that Rabbi Eliezer and the rabbis disagree with regard to this issue? That Rabbi Eliezer holds that we are concerned that a person might have engaged in bestiality with an animal, and the rabbis hold that we are not concerned that a person engaged in bestiality. The Gemara rejects this conclusion. From where do you know that this is the case? Perhaps everyone agrees that we are not concerned that a person might have engaged in bestiality with the animal, and here this is the reason of Rabbi Eliezer. He holds in accordance with a statement that Rabbi Yehuda says, that Rav says, as Rabbi Yehuda says that Rav says, if one placed a bundle of sacks upon a red heifer, he has rendered it unfit for purification, as a red heifer is fit only if it has not borne any burden, in accordance with the verse upon which never came a yoke, Numbers 19 verse 2. And in the case of the heifer whose neck is broken, it is not rendered unfit until you pull a load with it, as the verse states, in which has not drawn in the yoke, Deuteronomy 21 verse 3. The Gemara elaborates, one sage, Rabbi Eliezer, holds a red heifer purchased from a Gentile cannot be used for purification because we are concerned that it might have been used for labor. And one sage, the rabbis, holds we are not concerned. So the one sage that it's talking about is a representative view of the rabbis, meaning the majority, holds we are not concerned that the Gentile used it for labor. Accordingly, the disagreement in that Mishnah does not relate to a concern with regard to bestiality. The Gemara responds, no, it cannot enter your mind that Rabbi Eliezer prohibits purchasing a red heifer from a Gentile due to the concern that he might have placed sacks upon it. As due to the slight inconvenience of placing a bundle of sacks upon the heifer, the Gentile will not forfeit the potential to earn a great deal of money, which he can obtain by selling the heifer. The Gemara counters, so too, let us say, due to the slight pleasure of engaging in bestiality with an animal, a Gentile will not forfeit a great deal of money, which he can otherwise obtain by selling the heifer. The Gemara responds, there, with regard to with bestiality, his inclination overcomes him, and he is apt to engage in bestiality with the heifer, despite the fact that he knows it is to his disadvantage to do so. The Gemara suggests, and perhaps everyone agrees, that we are not concerned that a person might have engaged in bestiality with the animal. And here, this is the reason of Rabbi Eliezer, in accordance with that which Shelah taught, as Shelah taught in Braita. What is the reason of Rabbi Eliezer? The verse states, speak unto the children of Israel that they may take to you a red heifer, Numbers 19, verse 2. This teaches that the children of Israel take the red heifer, but Gentiles do not take the red heifer. The Gemara answers, it should not enter your mind to say, as the latter clause of that same Braita teaches. And similarly, Rabbi Eliezer would disqualify an animal purchased from a Gentile in the case of all in the case of all offerings. The Gemara elaborates, and if it should enter your mind that Rabbi Eliezer's reason is in accordance with that which Shelah taught, regarded in the case of the red heifer a term of taking is written, but is a term of taking written with regard to all other offerings. Since a term of taking does not appear in the context of other offerings, this cannot be Rabbi Eliezer's reasoning. The Gemara suggests, and perhaps the rabbis disagree with Rabbi Eliezer, only with regard to the red heifer, as its price is exorbitant, and the rabbis maintain that a Gentile not risk forfeiting the profit for a temporary benefit. So with regard to the rest of the offerings, which are not exceptionally valuable, they concede to Rabbi Eliezer that animals purchased from Gentiles may not be used for these offerings. So basically the idea is, the red heifer could bring in a lot of money because it's an extremely unique animal. So if a Gentile had one, basically it's name your price. The Gemara rejects this possibility, but what about that which is taught in the Tosefta, cited earlier? One may purchase an animal from Gentiles for use as an offering. In accordance with whose opinion was this taught? It is not the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer nor that of the rabbis. And furthermore, it is explicitly taught in Braita. What did Rabbi Eliezer's colleagues respond to him with regard to his ruling that an animal purchased from Gentiles may not be used as an offering? They quoted a verse, all flocks of Kedar shall be gathered together unto you. The rams of Nebaioth shall minister unto you. They should come up with acceptance upon my altar. Isaiah 60, verse 7. Since the rabbis learned from this verse that animals intended for use in all types of offerings may be purchased from Gentiles, there is no reason to assume that they concede to Rabbi Eliezer. Consequently, Rabbi Pedat's opinion that the Mishnah is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, while the Braita is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis, remains uncontroverted. It is interesting to point out that this verse may be referring to Islam because Muhammad came from the tribe of Nebaioth. And that obviously was not something that was, that obviously came about after the destruction of the temple, after the Gemara was written, everything like that. But that verse from Isaiah was written way, way before. So anyway, the Gemara continues to discuss the halachot of the red heifer. Rabbi Eliezer and the rabbis disagree only with regard to a case where there's, and I'll stop there. Actually, Islam, even though there's like an ideological we don't see eye to eye on like the stuff on the ground in life. Our religions are extremely, extremely close. There's literally a few points of religious contention. Just if you could remove a few, just a couple points of religious contention, a few points that they hold, our religions would be very, very parallel. And then some of those points of contention are not even in the Quran. So I've studied Islam. It is very interesting. So whenever I read that verse from Isaiah, it really makes me think. But anyway, that's another thing. I went in with some comments. There was a Muslim at one point that commented on some videos, and it is interesting. I think one day there definitely will be peace. There has to be, but anyway, I do think one day we will see eye to eye. The Gemara continues to discuss the halachot of the red heifer. Rabbi Eliezer and the rabbis disagree only with regard to a case where there is merely a concern that a person engaged in bestiality with the animal, but in a situation when the Gentile certainly engaged in bestiality with it, all agree that he has disqualified it as an offering. The Gemara comments, learn from it that the red heifer is classified as consecrated for the altar, as if it were classified as consecrated for temple maintenance. Does the fact that a person engaged in bestiality with it serve to disqualify it? Items consecrated for the maintenance of the temple, which are not sacrificed upon the altar, are not rendered unfit by this act. So basically, it's sacrificed outside on the Mount of Olives. I mean, in the setup of today, a long time ago, before everything was in that position, like in the desert and stuff like that, you didn't have this. But basically, it's sacrificed or slaughtered on the Mount of Olives, and the priest has to see line of sight to the opening, to the entrance of the temple. And this is why the temple structure was the way it was. It was kind of tiered, because from there he had line of sight, because there is a specific verse in the Torah that says that he shall take it outside of the opening of the tent of meeting. And so he has to see that, which contradicts Christianity, because Christianity says that Jesus was crucified in, Golgotha, which was on the opposite side of the temple, so didn't even have line of sight. So, there's funny things like that, but so he definitely was not the red heifer, or equivalent to that. Anyway, let's see. That's like God had his back. All right. The Gemara, the Gemara rejects this. Oh, so the idea is that it's maintenance of the temple, because you need the ashes of the red heifer to purify things from corpse impurity and to purify items for use in the temple. So that's why they're talking about it being consecrated for temple maintenance rather than a typical sacrifice, because the typical sacrifice has to be sacrificed inside the temple complex. Okay, so the Gemara rejects this conclusion. Although it is classified as consecrated for temple maintenance, the purification offering of the red heifer is different, as the Merciful One labels it with the term for a sin offering. Accordingly, the red heifer is subject to the same halachot as a sin offering, which means it is disqualified if it is the object of bestiality. The Gemara counters, if that is so, then the red heifer should be disqualified if it was born by cesarean section, as this is the halacha concerning all other sin offerings. The Gemara adds, and if you would say that indeed that is so, then why is it taught in a Braita, if one consecrated a red heifer despite the fact that it was born by cesarean section, it is disqualified for use as a red heifer, and Rabbi Shimon deems that the heifer fit for use in purification? If, as indicated by the verse, the halachot of a sin offering applied to the red heifer, how can Rabbi Shimon deem this animal fit? So the Gemara adds, and if you would say that Rabbi Shimon conforms to his standard line of reasoning, as he says, so if you reference Nida 40a, a baby born by cesarean section is considered a full-fledged offspring and is no different from a baby born in a regular manner. That is difficult. But doesn't Rabbi Yochanan say that Rabbi Shimon would concede with regard to sacrificial animals that an animal born by cesarean section is not consecrated? If so, even Rabbi Shimon would agree that the heifer is disqualified. The Gemara explains, rather, the red heifer is different, since a blemish disqualifies it. A matter of licentiousness and a matter of idol worship also disqualify it, as it is written, neither from the hand of a foreigner shall you offer the bread of your God of any of these, because their corruption is in them. There is a blemish in them. Leviticus 22:25. This verse indicates that corruption is considered a blemish. In the school of Rabbi Yishmael taught, anywhere that the term corruption is stated, it is a reference to nothing other than a matter of licentiousness and idol worship. The Gemara supports this claim. Corruption is a reference to a matter of licentiousness, as it is written with regard to the generation of the flood. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way upon the earth. Genesis 6:12. And corruption also is a reference to idol worship, as it is written, lest you deal corruptly and make you a graven image, Deuteronomy 4:16. And consequently, with regard to the red heifer also, since a blemish disqualifies it, a matter of licentiousness and idol worship likewise disqualify it. And I have to point out, don't think like corruption, like government corruption, because we're talking about Hebrew words that are translated in English here. So we're talking about words that have specific defined meanings as what we're defining here. So earlier, Shayla provided a rationale for Rabbi Eliezer's ruling that a red heifer may not be purchased from Gentiles. The Gemara examines the matter itself. Shayla teaches in a Braita, what is the reason of Rabbi Eliezer It is as it is written, speak unto the children of Israel, that they take to you a red heifer. Numbers 19, verse 2. This indicates that the children of Israel take the red heifer. So then when the verse states, with regard to the donations for the tabernacle, speak unto the children of Israel, that they take for me an offering. Exodus 25, verse 2. So too, one can claim that only the children of Israel take an offering for God, but Gentiles do not take an offering, and that no items for the temple service may be purchased from Gentiles. And if you would say that indeed that is so, this cannot be correct. But doesn't Rav Yehuda say that Shmuel says, the sages asked Rabbi Eliezer, to what extent must one exert himself to fulfill the mitzvah of honoring one's father and mother? The Rabbi Eliezer said to them, go and see what a certain Gentile did for his father in Ashkelon, and his name is Dama ben Netina. Once the sages sought to purchase precious stones from him for the ephod of the high priest. And now we're in Daf 24, so you have to wait for the next video to see the conclusion. Okay, thanks for watching.